Every war begins with confidence. Almost every defeat begins the same way. The 7th of December, 1941. It was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday morning. Sailors were waking slowly. Some were eating breakfast. Others were still asleep below deck. At Pearl Harbor, the American Pacific Fleet rested quietly in the calm waters of Hawaii. Battleships stood lined up like monuments of power, symbols of a nation that believed the war was far away. The United States was not officially part of World War II. Europe was burning. Asia was already at war. But America still believed distance meant safety. Then, at 7:48 a.m., the sky changed. Radar operators detected incoming aircraft. One young radar operator knew something was wrong, but nobody listened. The signal looked unusual large, fast-moving formations approaching the island. But the warning was dismissed. Officials believed the planes were American bombers expected from California. No alarm was sounded. No defensive positions were activated. No one imagined an enemy fleet was already within striking distance. Hundreds of miles away, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers had launched the largest naval air attack in history. Their mission was simple: destroy the U.S. Pacific Fleet before America could enter the war. Above Pearl Harbor, the first wave appeared suddenly out of the morning clouds. Japanese planes descended toward the harbor. Pilots saw battleships perfectly aligned below them, stationary targets. Then came the signal transmitted across the attack force. Tora! 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 Surprise achieved. Torpedoes struck the water. Bombs began falling from the sky. Explosions shattered the calm morning silence. Within minutes, ships were burning. Sailors ran across decks under machine gun fire. Anti-aircraft guns struggled to respond. Smoke rose thousands of feet into the air. America was no longer watching the war. The war had arrived, and the attack had only just begun. The first wave arrived just before 8 a.m. Japanese aircraft descended from the clouds in perfect formation. Most American sailors still believed it was a training exercise. Then the first torpedo hit. Water erupted beside Battleship Row. Within seconds, explosions echoed across Pearl Harbor. Aircraft engines screamed overhead as bombs fell with terrifying precision. The attackers knew exactly where to strike. Battleships, the pride of the Pacific Fleet, sat lined up, motionless targets. USS Oklahoma was struck repeatedly, rolling onto its side, while hundreds of sailors were trapped inside. USS West Virginia burned as torpedoes tore through its hull. Anti-aircraft guns finally opened fire. Unprepared crews rushed to battle stations. Some sailors fired machine guns without orders. Others tried to save wounded comrades as burning fuel spread across the harbor. Above them, dive bombers targeted airfields. American planes were destroyed before they could even take off. Rows of aircraft exploded on the ground, eliminating any chance of immediate defense. Smoke covered the sky. Communication broke down. Commanders struggled to understand what was happening. This was not an exercise. This was war. And the first wave was only the beginning. What happened after the smoke cleared at Pearl Harbor shocked even Japan's commanders, because America did not collapse, it awakened. The attack lasted less than 2 hours, but its consequences reshaped the world overnight. Battleships lay destroyed, aircraft burned on the ground, and more than 2,400 Americans were dead. Yet one critical objective had failed US. Aircraft carriers were not in the harbor. Japan had struck hard, but not decisively. Within hours, the United States made a decision that would change history forever. Across the Pacific, commanders scrambled to understand what had happened. Confusion turned into determination. Surviving ships began rescue operations, while sailors searched burning wrecks for survivors trapped inside steel hulls. Messages raced between bases. America was now officially at war. The next morning, one speech united an entire nation. On December 8, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed Congress, calling the attack a date which will live in infamy. Within minutes, Congress declared war on Japan almost unanimously. Millions of Americans enlisted. Factories switched to wartime production. Isolation ended instantly. The United States had entered World War II. But Japan's greatest fear was only beginning to appear over the horizon. American aircraft carriers, untouched at Pearl Harbor, became the backbone of a new naval strategy. Instead of relying on battleships, the U.S. Navy prepared for a different kind of warfare, fast, mobile, and driven by air power. The Pacific Ocean was about to become the largest battlefield in history, and just months later, America would strike back in a way no one expected. Plans formed for a daring counterattack deep inside Japanese territory. It would be risky, symbolic, and nearly impossible, but it would prove one thing to the world. Pearl Harbor had not weakened America. It had forged its resolve. Fade to black. After Pearl Harbor, Japan believed America would hesitate. They expected negotiations, fear, delay. Instead, the United States began preparing something unimaginable. The American Navy understood one brutal truth. Battleships were no longer the future of war. Aircraft carriers now ruled the ocean. While Japan expanded rapidly across the Pacific, American commanders searched for a way to respond. The nation needed proof that it could fight back. Only 4 months after Pearl Harbor, a daring plan was approved. Bombers would launch from an aircraft carrier, something never attempted before. The mission was nearly suicidal. The planes lacked fuel to return safely. Many pilots knew they might never come home. But the objective was not destruction. It was psychological. In April 1942, 16 B-25 bombers lifted off from the carrier USS Hornet and flew toward Japan itself. When bombs fell over Tokyo, the impossible happened. Japan realized its homeland was vulnerable. The attack caused limited physical damage, but its psychological impact was enormous. American morale surged overnight. Newspapers declared that the United States had answered Pearl Harbor. For Japan's leadership, the raid created urgency. They needed a decisive victory before American industry fully awakened. This fear pushed Japan toward a dangerous gamble, a battle that would soon decide control of the Pacific. Midway, the war had entered a new phase, and this time, America was ready. After the Doolittle raid, Japan faced a dangerous reality. America was stronger than expected and growing stronger every day. Japanese commanders believed only one decisive victory could stop the United States before its industrial power became unstoppable. Their plan was bold: lure the American fleet into a trap near a small island few had ever heard of. Midway, Japan assembled one of the most powerful naval forces ever created. 4 aircraft carriers, veterans of Pearl Harbor, sailed toward the island, confident they still controlled the Pacific. But something had changed. American intelligence had broken Japanese naval codes. Admiral Chester Nimitz knew the attack was coming. Instead of reacting, the United States prepared an ambush of its own. American carriers waited silently beyond the horizon. On the 4th of June, 1942, Japanese aircraft attacked Midway Island, believing American carriers were far away. While Japanese planes refueled and rearmed on crowded flight decks, American dive bombers suddenly appeared above the fleet. Within minutes, chaos erupted. Bombs struck 3 Japanese carriers almost simultaneously. Fires spread uncontrollably. Aircraft exploded before they could launch. Deck crews fought desperately, but the damage was irreversible. Hours later, the fourth carrier was destroyed. In a single day, Japan lost the core of its experienced naval aviation pilots who could never be replaced quickly. The balance of power in the Pacific shifted forever. Japan was no longer advancing. Now it was defending. And from this moment forward, the war would slowly move toward Japan itself. After Midway, the Pacific War changed forever. Japan had entered the conflict believing speed would guarantee victory. Early successes seemed to prove that strategy correct. Pearl Harbor, rapid conquests across Southeast Asia, and dominance at sea created the illusion of unstoppable momentum. But modern war was no longer decided by single victories. It was decided by production, logistics, and endurance. The United States possessed something Japan could never match: industrial power. American factories produced ships, aircraft, and weapons faster than losses could occur. New carriers entered service while Japan struggled to replace even experienced pilots lost at Midway. The war slowly transformed into a contest of resources. Island by island, American forces advanced across the Pacific. Each battle pushed closer to Japan's homeland. Supply lines stretched thinner. Fuel shortages began limiting Japanese naval operations. Aircraft remained grounded, not because of enemy attacks, but because there was no fuel left to fly. Japan's strategy depended on forcing America into negotiation through shock and early victories. Instead, Pearl Harbor achieved the opposite. It unified American society, mobilized its economy, and awakened a nation capable of fighting a global war on an unprecedented scale. By 1943, the outcome was no longer a question of if Japan would lose, but when. The attack that was meant to secure Japan's future had sealed its fate. Pearl Harbor was not the beginning of Japanese victory. It was the moment defeat became inevitable. History remembered the explosions, the burning ships, and the surprise attack. But the real turning point was invisible. Japan had awakened a superpower, and once awakened, it could not be stopped. Pearl Harbor did not defeat America. It awakened it. History teaches the same lesson again and again. Even the greatest powers fall.